November 1817. A single candle flickers in the draughty halls of Claremont House. It marks the end of a hope that once held a nation together. The heiress to the British throne is dead at 21. And with her, the direct line of the House of Hanover vanishes into the autumn mist, leaving a crown without an heir. Princess Charlotte was the people's princess of her day, the only legitimate grandchild of King George III. To understand her importance, one must understand the darkness of the Regency era she was meant to replace. Her father, the Prince Regent, was widely loathed, a man of excessive debts, public scandals and private cruelties. He had married Charlotte's mother, Caroline of Brunswick, only to pay off his massive debts. It was a union born in hate. Reports from their wedding night describe a prince so drunk he spent the evening collapsed by the fireplace, ignoring his bride. Caroline was treated with cold neglect. Yet from this brief and bitter union, Charlotte was born in 1796. She grew up in a palace that felt like a fortress, a pawn in her parents' public and increasingly ugly scandals. She was raised in isolation, moved between cold palaces, and kept under the watchful eyes of governors who reported her every move. At 18, she was told she must marry William of Orange. It was a match that would have sent her away to the Netherlands. Charlotte resisted. In a moment of legendary defiance, she ran away in a common hackney coach to find her mother. In 1814, the Prince Regent tried to force her into a marriage with William, the Prince of Orange. It was a political move designed to send her away, removing the popular princess from the British public's sight forever. Charlotte resisted. In a moment of legendary defiance, she ran away in a common hackney coach to find her mother. The people cheered her rebellion. They saw a princess who would not be bullied, a future queen who was one of them. They spent their days walking in the woods and their evenings reading. It was a golden interval of peace and joy. Their wedding in May 1816 was the first moment of genuine royal joy the nation had seen in decades. They moved to Claremont House, far from the toxic atmosphere of London and her father's watchful, jealous eyes. For the first time, Charlotte was truly happy. They lived simply, walking the grounds and studying together for her future reign. Their moral, quiet life was the perfect antidote to the Regency's excess. They were the couple the nation pinned its hopes on. When it was announced she was pregnant in 1817, the nation began a countdown to a new era. It wasn't just sentiment, it was survival. The markets were expected to soar on the news of a healthy male heir, but there was a dark history of miscarriages. Charlotte had already lost 2 children. This pregnancy had to be different. The Prince Regent chose Sir Richard Croft to manage the birth, a man of high reputation and even higher unbending theories. Croft was a non-interventionist. He believed nature knew best, even when nature was clearly struggling. He placed Charlotte on a starvation diet and subjected her to constant bloodletting. By the time labour began, she was exhausted. On the evening of November 3rd, the labour started. It would become one of the most famous medical disasters in history. 12 hours in, and there was no progress. Yet Croft remained immovable, refusing to allow any other physicians to intervene. On the evening of November 5th, a son was finally born. A 9-pound boy, perfectly formed, but silent, stillborn. Charlotte accepted the news with a quiet, heartbreaking dignity. "I am a mother," she whispered, "but my child is an angel." Her dignity was heartbreaking. For a few hours, a false calm settled over Claremont. The princess took some broth and appeared to be resting at last. But at midnight, the tragedy shifted. She began to hemorrhage, her heart racing as her body finally surrendered. By 2 in the morning on November 6th, the heiress was gone. She was just 21 years old. National hope died with her. Prince Leopold was utterly shattered. He had lost his wife, his son, and the future they had built together in one night. As the sun rose, the news spread like a cold front through London. The city fell into a silence more profound than any celebration. The mourning was unprecedented. It was said that not a single person in the country was without a black armband. The demand for mourning clothes was so high that shops across the country ran completely out of black fabric. The nation turned black. For Sir Richard Croft, the guilt was unbearable. Blamed by the public, he took his own life 3 months later. The triple tragedy was complete. But as the mourning faded, a terrifying reality emerged. The House of Hanover had no legitimate heir left. The line was broken. George III had 7 surviving sons, but not one of them had a legitimate grandchild left to inherit the crown. This triggered the Hymen's War, a frantic scramble where aging, dissolute dukes abandoned their mistresses to find royal brides and secure the line. William, the Duke of Clarence, was the first to marry. He chose Princess Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen, hoping for an heir. Tragically, none of their children survived infancy. The throne remained without a clear future, and the panic deepened. Then came Edward, the Duke of Kent. At 50, he abandoned his long-term mistress to seek a royal bride and save the dynasty. He married Victoire of Saxe-Coburg, the sister of Charlotte's grieving widower, Leopold. The Coburgs were positioning themselves. The race was on. Multiple royal births were expected in 1819. The future of the British monarchy hung on a heartbeat. On May 24, 1819, a daughter was born to the Kents at Kensington Palace. They named her Alexandrina Victoria. Because her father Edward was older than his brother's other contenders, his child took precedence. Victoria was now the heir, but the tragedy of the Hanoverians continued. When Victoria was just 8 months old, her father died of a sudden illness. Victoria grew up in the rigid, secluded Kensington system, a world of rules meant to protect and control her, much like Charlotte. Her uncle Leopold, Charlotte's widower, became her secret mentor, writing to her from Belgium and shaping her mind for rule. Leopold saw in Victoria the ghost of the daughter he had lost. He helped her become the queen he once hoped Charlotte would be. In 1837, Victoria ascended the throne at 18. The era of the aging dukes was finally over. The public saw in her the fulfillment of the hope they had once placed in Charlotte. She was the lost queen returned. Victoria's 64-year reign would define an entire century and change the course of human history forever. But we must remember, without Charlotte's tragic death, the Victorian era, and Victoria herself, would never have existed. Charlotte is the silent architect of the 19th century. Her tragedy was the catalyst for Britain's greatest reign. Today, she rests in the shadows of St. George's Chapel, her short life eclipsed by the long shadow of the woman who replaced her. But in the archives of Crowns and Sorrows, we remember the person inside the title, the woman who died for her duty. Charlotte is the silent architect of the 19th century. Her tragedy was the catalyst for Britain's greatest reign. Today, she rests in the shadows of St. George's Chapel, her short life eclipsed by the long shadow of the woman who replaced her. In the archives of Crowns and Sorrows, we remember the person inside the title, the woman who died for her duty and her heart. Which royal heart do you want to hear next? The crown is heavy, but the human stories beneath it are heavier still. Subscribe to Crowns and Sorrows to join us as we uncover the people inside the titles. Until next time. Behind the tragedy of Charlotte lay the madness of her grandfather, King George III. His illness left a power vacuum at the heart of the empire. The Regency Act of 1811 gave her father power, but it also fueled the bitter rivalries within the royal family. Charlotte was surrounded by nuns, as she called them, governesses, chosen for their loyalty to her father rather than their care for her. During her engagement struggle, she wrote forbidden letters to Leopold, planning a future that her father tried desperately to prevent. When her wedding was finally allowed, the public saw it as a victory over the Prince Regent's tyranny. She was their champion. Croft's medical treatment included the removal of excess blood, which he believed would prevent inflammation. In reality, it drained her life force. He kept her on a diet of tea and dry toast, fearing the child would grow too large for a safe birth. He was right about the size, but wrong about the cure. 50 hours into labor, Charlotte was so exhausted she could barely speak. Yet Croft remained immovable, a captive of his own theories. Her father, upon hearing the news, was reportedly so shocked he had to be bled himself. Even his cold heart was broken. Her funeral was a moment of national standstill. Thousands lined the streets in absolute silence. a sea of black in the London rain. The public didn't just mourn, they sought a culprit. Croft was hounded by the press and the people, accused of medical murder. Frederick, the second son, was also childless. The crisis was not just about the next generation, but the one after it. William's marriage to Adelaide was one of duty, but it became one of mutual support in the face of repeated, tragic loss. Edward of Kent was so deeply in debt he had to flee to Germany for a time. His marriage was his final gamble for redemption. Victoria's upbringing was governed by the Kensington system, a set of rules so strict she was never allowed to be alone for a single moment. When she was told she was queen, her first request was for an hour alone, a freedom she had never known in her entire life. Her coronation was a moment of national rebirth. The people saw in her the princess they had lost 2 decades before. Victoria's reign saw the transition from a collection of kingdoms to a global empire that defined the modern world. Charlotte's death was the end of the old world. Victoria's birth was the beginning of the new. History turned on that one tragic night. Her memorial remains one of the most beautiful and tragic sights in St. George's, a silent witness to a future that never was. In the end, it is the human stories that endure. The princess who fought for her heart and the nation that never forgot her. Which royal heart do you want to hear next? Subscribe to join us as we uncover the people inside the titles. Until next time.